let's say you're at the cinema and in the first row there are 20 seats. So just imagine there are 20 seats here. In the second row there are 22 seats. In the third row there are 24 seats, and so on. So let's say this cinema has 50 rows. How many seats are there altogether? So we need to develop a formula to work out the sum of all the seats. So let's look at the seats. Hang on. Let's generate the number of seats in each row. So in the first row there are 20 seats. In the second row there are 22 seats, and so on. So let's find a way of generating all these numbers here. So notice that each step of the way you're adding 2 extra seats. So it's going to be 2, and then because it jumps by 2 each time, you know it's going to be something of this form. And the trick is to find out this number here. Find out this number here in such a way that when you jump each time, you add it by 2. So this 2n, remember when n is 1, it must give you the answer of 20. So this thing here must be 18. It must be 18 here. So look, when n is 1, you jump by 2 times 1. So basically, you're going to need an 18 here. So this thing here will generate all our seats. It will generate all our seats, and we need to sum up everything up to 50 when n equals 50. This is when n equals 1 for the first term. Because there are 50 rows, we need to sum up everything. So we need to sum up everything. So this thing here will generate all our seats. When n is 1, the first row, it will give us 20. When n is 2, it will give us 22. When n is 3, it will give us 24. We need to sum up everything from 1 to 50. So the number of seats is given by this. But we need a formula to sum up. We need a formula to sum up this this whole sequence. Okay, so to develop that, I'm expecting you to know this by now. If you try and sum up the first 100 numbers from 1 to 100, we've done this before, so I'm expecting you to know this. You would get the first, add the second, add the last, get the first, add the last, get the average of the two, and then times by the number of terms. There are 50. There are 100 of them. So for you to sum up the first 100 numbers, it would be given by this. And we've done this before, and we've derived this before. We've got a formula for this. So I'm expecting you to know this by now. But now we are going to develop a way of summing it up in such a way that it jumps by 2 each time. We don't yet have a formula for a case when it jumps by 2 each time. So remember, our sequence was you start out with your first number, and the d here is 2 each time because we're jumping by 2 each time. So this one here would be another 2. Notice it's 4, and then well, it jumps by 2 each time. So in our case, our sequence is given by this. We need to develop a way of summing up all these numbers here. Okay, so so to do this, we want to sum up everything. So this is the number which we are trying to obtain. We're trying to get this number here because this number here represents a sum of everything. So the trick is to consider the exact same thing here, but just written in reverse. So the first one here, this is the first. This is the second. The last one here is actually the first over here. So basically, consider this exactly the same thing, but just write in reverse. Write in reverse, and when you get this plus this, it will give you 2SN. So when you get this plus this, it will give you this thing here. When you get this plus this, it will give you this thing here. When you get this plus this, it will give you this thing here. And when you get this plus this, it will give you this thing here. Add these two together, it will give you this. Let me explain why when you get this, add this, it will then give you this. So if you look at this, when you get this plus this, it will give you 2a, and then here you got 2d, and then here you got minus 3d, so that will then give you minus 1d. Think about it. When you get this plus this, it does indeed give you this. Take your time to figure this out. It does give you this. So notice that all these all these are the same. Well, hang on. When you clean this up, it will be 2a plus 2a plus 2a plus 2a. So that would be 2a times n lots. And then because all these are the same, you simply get this thing, or all the things that are the same, and then you times by n terms, because there are n of them. Well, think about it. This whole thing here will then become this. Okay, and then now you've got two blocks here. Notice that n is in common. Factor out the n, so that will then give you this thing here. And then to get Sn on its own, remember Sn represents what we're trying to find, the sum of everything. So to get Sn on its own, you divide both sides by 2. So dividing both sides by 2, it will give you this. So this is a formula for us to sum up on the whole sequence when it jumps by a d amount each time. So it jumps by 2 each time. We now have a formula to work out the sum of everything. So going back to here, hang on. So remember, to add up the first 100 numbers, you would get the first, add the last, get the average of the two, and then times by the number of terms. In this case, it's 100. As it turns out that the formula which we just developed works in the same way. It's really you getting the first, add the last, get the average of the two, and then times by 50 rows in our case. And let me explain why this really boils down to you getting the first, add the last, divided by 2, and then times by n, which is 50 in our case. So hang on. So this is the formula that we developed earlier. If you break up this a2 here, 2a here, it really becomes a plus a, and then you've got this block here, and then here you can see that remember that this is a formula which we developed. As it turns out, you would get the first plus the last, because this is the last here, divided by 2 to get the average, and then once you've got the average, times by the number of terms, which was this n here. So the formula which we developed was actually quite complicated, but as it turns out, all you need to do is get the first plus the last, and then divided by 2, and then times by the number of terms. In our case, 50 rows. Okay, so let's put this into practice. So remember our cinema, the first row was 20, and then if you work it out, the last row, the 50th row, would have 118 seats. So if you want to sum up everything, just get the first, add it to the last, and then get the average of the two. Once you've got the average, times it by the number of rows. As it turns out, the number of seats is given by this. Okay.